The fall of a marriage worth $500 million didn't just dominate headlines in Hong Kong, it shook the very foundation of an entire entertainment empire. Before everything collapsed, Cecilia Cheung and Nicholas Tse weren't just a celebrity couple. They were the golden dynasty of Asian showbiz, a brand so powerful that every film, every endorsement, and every public appearance translated into multi-million-dollar deals. They were young, untouchable, adored, and marketed as the perfect fusion of beauty, talent, and privilege. But behind the glamorous facade, pressure was silently building hidden tensions, family expectations, secret alliances inside Hong Kong's entertainment hierarchy, and a brutal industry that demanded emotional sacrifices long before the world ever saw their smiles. And then, one night, a set of leaked photographs detonated like a bomb, turning the city upside down, igniting a cultural firestorm, and dragging their marriage into a downward spiral from which neither of them would ever fully return. What followed was a decade of rumors, betrayals, corporate power struggles, and one of the most expensive divorces the region had ever witnessed tonight. We go inside the saga that rewrote the rules of Hong Kong celebrity culture. A story of fame, money, and the devastating price of living under relentless public scrutiny. Their story began long before they became Hong Kong's most celebrated power couple, shaped by two very different childhoods and two sharply contrasting paths into stardom. Nicholas Tse, born into a showbiz dynasty, carried the weight of fame long before he earned it. As the son of Patrick Tse and Deborah Lee, two icons who defined an era, Nicholas grew up under blinding spotlights and relentless scrutiny. He was rebellious, charismatic, and unpredictable, the kind of rising star whose every misstep only made him more fascinating to the public. Cecilia Cheung, on the other hand, emerged from a background that couldn't be more different. Raised in a fractured family and discovered by chance on the streets of Hong Kong, she rocketed to fame with her raw beauty and emotional intensity on screen. Her performance in King of Comedy turned her into the industry's newest darling, and suddenly, the girl who once had nothing was commanding the kind of attention normally reserved for royalty. When their paths finally crossed, fans saw it as destiny. Their chemistry was instant and electrifying, the kind that didn't need words. Their relationship quickly became a tabloid obsession, but what the public didn't know was that both were building empires far larger than their youthful fame suggested. As Cecilia secured leading roles across Asia and dominated beauty endorsements, Nicholas was reinventing himself from teen idol into a multifaceted entertainer, earning millions through music, film, and business ventures. By the time they officially married in 2006, the combined value of their contracts, assets, and long-term deals was already estimated to exceed $500 million. Brands lined up to attach their names to everything from luxury cosmetics to international campaigns, while the Hong Kong media crowned them the golden couple of a new generation. Yet few understood the intense pressures beneath the surface. The Tse family legacy loomed over every decision Nicholas made, especially with a father known for his volatile temper and a mother with deep ties across the industry. Cecilia, meanwhile, was adjusting to a new life where every emotion, every gesture, and every rumor had financial consequences. They were young, wealthy, and adored, but also trapped inside a machine that demanded perfection at all times. Their private life shrank to almost nothing as paparazzi swarmed outside their home and tabloids published daily speculation about their marriage. Still, for a brief moment, it seemed they might overcome the weight of fame. They welcomed their first son, Lucas, and later their second, Quintus, creating the image of a glamorous, resilient, modern-era royal family. But beneath the polished veneer, tiny fractures began to appear. Stress from endless schedules, pressure from powerful industry figures, silent disagreements that neither of them had time to resolve. They didn't know it yet, but they were already standing on the edge of a storm that would soon become one of the most explosive scandals in Hong Kong history. And that storm started with a series of photographs that were never meant to be seen. The storm that would destroy everything arrived without warning, triggered by a single leak that spiraled into one of the most catastrophic scandals in Asian entertainment history. In early 2008, a technician at a Hong Kong repair shop stumbled upon a folder of private photographs stored on a computer brought in by actor and singer Edison Chen. What should have been a routine repair suddenly became a time bomb. Those images, explicit, personal, and never meant for public eyes, involved multiple actresses, but it was Cecilia Cheung's presence in them that would detonate the heart of a marriage already strained by fame and expectation. Once the photos escaped the repair shop, they spread like wildfire across underground forums, then mainstream media, then global news. Within hours, the scandal consumed Hong Kong police launched an investigation, but nothing could stop the digital avalanche. In a culture obsessed with morality and image, especially for female stars, the fallout for Cecilia was immediate and unforgiving. Endorsement deals worth millions vanished overnight. Film studios froze her contracts, and brands that once fought for her presence now erased her from campaigns as if she never existed. Reporters camped outside her home, dissecting every expression on her face, while tabloids published daily attacks portraying her as the central figure of a national scandal. But inside the Tse household, the situation was far more volatile. Nicholas was thrust into a nightmare no public figure could prepare for. He had to defend his marriage while navigating powerful family expectations, media pressure, and a fiercely traditional entertainment culture. His father, Patrick Tse, known for his strong opinions and old-school mentality, reportedly pushed Nicholas to protect the family name at all costs. His mother, Deborah, who had built her entire career on glamour and image, hated seeing the family dragged into chaos. Nicholas found himself torn between defending the woman he loved, preserving his family legacy, and protecting his two young children from a scandal too dark for them to ever understand. But the silence between him and Cecilia grew heavier by the day. While he threw himself into work, Cecilia faced the fire alone. Public sympathy was scarce. Much of the industry treated her as if she were responsible for the entire scandal. She issued apologies, withdrew from public life, and tried to shield her sons from the media frenzy. But the damage had already carved deep scars into her public identity. The scandal had also begun to affect Nicholas's career. Producers worried that keeping him in major projects would attract backlash, especially because his marriage had become intertwined with public outrage. Business partners pressured him to distance himself, to make decisions that would stabilize his brand value, even if those decisions meant emotionally abandoning the woman who was fighting to stay afloat. Inside their home, trust eroded. Conversations turned into arguments. Arguments turned into silence, and silence became the most devastating enemy of all. But the pressure wasn't just emotional, it was financial. At their peak, the couple's combined net worth and future contracts exceeded $500 million. The scandal put every one of those assets at risk. Studios reviewed contract clauses, sponsors threatened legal action, and the media chased every angle that could further destroy Cecilia's image. Nicholas knew the longer he remained by her side without a public statement, the more his own career would bleed. Friends close to the couple later described the atmosphere in their home as suffocating. Cecilia, already fragile from the public assault, struggled with fear that her presence was ruining Nicholas's future. Nicholas, overwhelmed by responsibility, felt trapped between loyalty and survival. And then came the detail that would ignite the next stage of their downfall. The growing belief within Hong Kong's media that Nicholas had emotionally checked out of the marriage. Rumors claimed he was distant, appearing cold in private, and no longer willing to fight for the relationship. Whether true or not, perception became reality. The scandal had not only attacked their public identities, it had pierced the core of their marriage. And while the world debated who was to blame, the truth was far more tragic. Both of them were losing a battle that neither ever had a chance of winning. They had survived fame. They had survived pressure, but they couldn't survive this. What happened next would push them past the point of no return, transforming a marriage once worth $500 million into a slow-motion collapse that even their most loyal supporters couldn't stop. In the months following the scandal, the marriage that once looked unbreakable began to crack in ways neither of them could repair. The public believed they were rebuilding their lives behind closed doors, but the truth was far more chaotic. Cecilia tried to return to work, signing on to new films in an attempt to reclaim the career she had spent years building. Yet every appearance, every press conference, every movie premiere was shadowed by the scandal that refused to die. She could feel the judgment in every camera flash and every headline that still referenced her as a symbol of Hong Kong's biggest entertainment disaster. Meanwhile, Nicholas responded to the crisis the only way he knew how, by burying himself in work. He began taking on back-to-back projects, disappearing for long stretches of time, and letting his schedule fill the void where emotional conversations once lived. What looked like resilience from the outside was, in reality, avoidance. He no longer knew how to confront the storm consuming their home, and the more he distanced himself, the more Cecilia felt abandoned. Rumors intensified that the Teo family had never truly accepted her, and insiders claimed that the scandal had only deepened the divide. Friends later recalled moments where Nicholas seemed torn between protecting his wife and upholding the expectations of a dynasty that cared more about legacy than empathy. The pressure transformed their home into a battleground of unspoken resentment. Financial stress piled on top of everything else, contracts delayed, endorsements withdrawn, and projects canceled. Left both of them staring at the slow erosion of the $500 million empire they had once proudly shared. Even the simplest decisions became arguments about money, about privacy, about public appearances, about how to protect their sons from a world that was no longer kind. But the real breaking point began with small moments that were invisible to the public. Nicholas coming home late without explanations, Cecilia accusing him of emotional withdrawal, and both of them choosing silence because they were too exhausted to fight their love. Once survived paparazzi, career demands, and constant scrutiny, but now it couldn't survive the wounds left by a scandal neither asked for. And then came the moment the media would later label the irreversible fracture. In 2011, during a flight back to Hong Kong, Cecilia encountered Edison Chen on the same plane. The incident was brief, nothing more than a photo taken together, but its impact was nuclear. When the image leaked, the internet exploded. To the public, it looked like a provocation. To Nicholas, it felt like betrayal, or at least that's how those close to him described his reaction. Whether Cecilia intended harm or simply acted impulsively, the timing was catastrophic. Nicholas had spent years trying to distance their family from the scandal, and now, in a single snapshot, the past he had fought to bury was suddenly resurrected. The photo reignited the media frenzy, reopened old wounds, and shattered the fragile recovery the couple had been trying to build. Nicholas's anger wasn't loud, it was cold, distant, and final. He reportedly stopped speaking to Cecilia for days, then weeks. Friends said this was the moment he emotionally left the marriage. Cecilia, already struggling with public pressure, now faced a private heartbreak she could not escape. She watched the last piece of their relationship crumble, powerless to stop it. When Nicholas finally made his decision, it came with a clarity that stunned even those closest to him he wanted out. There would be no reconciliation, no counseling, no last attempt to fix what fame and scandal had torn apart. The marriage that once symbolized the golden age of Hong Kong entertainment was now collapsing under the weight of every unspoken grievance, every media headline, and every shadow that had followed them since the night the photographs first leaked. And as the world speculated about their silence, the truth was simple. They were no longer partners, no longer united, and no longer holding on to the hope that love could survive the brutality of fame. What came next would turn a private heartbreak into a public spectacle. The most expensive and emotionally charged celebrity divorce Hong Kong had ever seen. When the announcement finally came, it was not a dramatic press conference nor a tearful statement. It was a cold, concise declaration delivered through lawyers Nicholas Tse and Cecilia Cheung were officially ending their marriage. The news tore through Hong Kong like a shockwave, instantly dominating front pages, TV broadcasts, and online forums. But behind the headlines was a far more complex battlefield: the dismantling of a $500 million empire built on love, image, and carefully crafted public identity. The divorce negotiations began with an intensity that reflected the magnitude of what was at stake. Their combined portfolio was vast. Multiple properties across Hong Kong and Vancouver, long-term endorsement deals, film contracts, production partnerships, and a network of investments tied to both their futures. Each asset carried stories, obligations, and reputational value. Studios and brands, fearful of further damage, quietly pushed for a clean separation, hoping to recover what remained of their marketability. But the true stakes centered around their children. Lucas and Quintus were at the heart of every discussion, every argument, every strategic move. The Tse family, known for its influence and deep connections, stepped into the negotiations with decisive force. Patrick Tse, protective of his bloodline, reportedly insisted that the boys should carry the family legacy, while Deborah emphasized the importance of stability and public perception. Their involvement turned what could have been a private negotiation into a high-tension power struggle. Cecilia, already bruised by years of public scrutiny, refused to let her children become pawns in a media circus. She fought fiercely for custody, arguing that she had been the primary caregiver while Nicholas traveled extensively for work. Her legal team highlighted her devotion, her sacrifices, and her role in shielding the children from the harsh spotlight that had almost destroyed her career. For Nicholas, the challenge was equally emotional. Despite his distant demeanor in the months leading up to the divorce, he loved his sons deeply. But his public image, career prospects, and family dynasty were also on the negotiating table. Advisors urged him to protect his long-term interests, to take the path that would ensure stability for his own future as well as theirs. As the legal battle intensified, the media dissected every development. Commentators speculated about hidden assets, secret agreements, and confidential clauses that would never be made public. Rumors circulated that Cecilia demanded a substantial settlement, not for luxury, but to secure a stable life for her children away from the chaos of Hong Kong media. Some insiders whispered that Nicholas offered less than expected, determined not to let the scandal define the financial legacy he had worked so hard to build. Then came the twist no one saw coming. Cecilia ultimately won physical custody of both children. Whether through negotiation or Nicholas's quiet agreement, she walked away with the responsibility and the burden of raising them largely on her own. But the cost was heavy. The divorce effectively froze her career. Studios avoided her name, sponsors refused to engage, and the industry treated her as a liability. The woman who had once commanded multi-million-dollar contracts was now fighting to rebuild from zero. For Nicholas, however, the separation marked a profound shift. Freed from constant media scrutiny tied to the scandal, he began refocusing his career, taking on roles that rebranded him as a mature, disciplined, and reliable industry figure. He launched food programs, expanded business ventures, and carefully curated a clean, resilient public image. But no matter how carefully managed the narrative was, the truth remained that the divorce had fractured Hong Kong's entertainment hierarchy. It exposed the fragility of celebrity power, the toxic expectations placed on public figures, and the extent to which an entire industry was willing to sacrifice individuals to preserve its own reputation. And perhaps the most haunting part was how little of the real story the public ever truly understood. The documents were sealed. The negotiations were private. The statements were scripted. But in the silence between the lines, one truth stood out. A dynasty had fallen. The facade of perfection was gone forever, and two people who once shared a bond worth $500 million were now walking separate paths, carrying scars the world would never see. In the years after the divorce, the lives of Cecilia Chung and Nicholas Tse unfolded like two separate films with drastically different tones. Cecilia's story became one of survival, resilience, and reinvention, while Nicholas's path led him toward a carefully curated rebirth that seemed almost engineered by the industry that once watched him burn. For Cecilia, the aftermath was brutal. The industry that had celebrated her beauty and talent now treated her like a relic of scandal. Producers avoided her name in meetings, brands quietly removed her from consideration lists, and scripts that once flowed toward her with ease now disappeared. She had become a symbol, not of failure, but of something far more unforgiving, a reminder of how quickly the entertainment world could turn on its own. To shield her sons from the toxicity of Hong Kong tabloids, she relocated to Singapore and mainland China, places where the media pressure was less suffocating and where she could carve out a quieter, more stable life. But even there, peace was temporary. Questions about the identity of her third child's father became a recurring media obsession, fueling speculation that overshadowed every attempt she made to restart her career. Yet despite the scrutiny, she refused to disappear. She took on smaller projects, built a following in China through variety shows, and modernized her public image through social media, reminding audiences that she was more than the scandal that once defined her. Still, no reinvention could completely rewrite her past. Every time her name trended, the shadows of 2008 and 2011 resurfaced, as if time had only paused, not healed. Nicholas, on the other hand, experienced one of the most remarkable career recoveries in Hong Kong entertainment. After the dust settled, he leaned into a new identity, no longer the rebellious idol, but a disciplined entrepreneur, chef, and producer with a reputation for precision and professionalism. His food show, Chef Nick, transformed him from actor to lifestyle icon, earning him endorsements and partnerships that re-established the commercial empire he once risked losing. But his personal life raised even more eyebrows. Years after the divorce, Nicholas rekindled his relationship with legendary singer Faye Wong, a romance many considered unconventional but strangely poetic. Their reunion dominated headlines, painting Nicholas as someone capable of love beyond societal expectations, even while critics questioned whether the timing of their rekindled romance hinted at unresolved emotions long before the divorce. Whether the speculation was fair or not, one thing was undeniable. Nicholas had managed to escape the gravity of the scandal in a way Cecilia never could. But the deeper story was more complex than the surface narrative of success and failure. Insiders suggested that Nicholas never intended to publicly fight for his sons because he believed the constant media warfare would destroy them. Some claimed he sent support privately, choosing distance over drama. Others believed the Tse family's influence created an unspoken agreement that protected Nicholas's public image while leaving Cecilia to weather the storm alone. And then there were the rumors, whispers of hidden clauses in the divorce settlement, private financial arrangements, and unresolved conflicts that neither party ever addressed publicly. The truth, sealed inside confidential documents, never reached the public, leaving only speculation to fill the gaps. Despite their separation, the shadows of their marriage lingered in ways neither could escape. Whenever Cecilia made a news appearance, the comments inevitably referenced Nicholas. Whenever Nicholas launched a new project, the past resurfaced as a quiet echo in online discussions. Their lives had become permanently intertwined, not through love, but through history. History written in scandal, sacrifice, and the relentless cruelty of fame. And in a painful way, they both carried the same fate. No matter how much they rebuilt, the world would always remember the explosion that tore them apart. Their divorce became a cautionary tale in Hong Kong, an example of how even the most glamorous, powerful unions can collapse under the weight of secrets, pressure, and a single moment captured on camera. Fame had given them everything, but it had also taken everything away. And as time went on, one truth remained hauntingly clear. Some shadows never fade, no matter how bright the spotlight tries to shine. In the end, the story of Cecilia Chung and Nicholas Tse is not simply the downfall of a glamorous marriage, nor just another tabloid sensation swallowed by the relentless machinery of Hong Kong entertainment. It is a reminder of how fragile even the brightest empires can be when built in a world where every mistake is magnified, every rumor becomes truth, and every private moment can turn into public ammunition. They once stood as a $500 million dynasty, two icons whose power, beauty, and influence defined an era. Yet all it took was one scandal, one moment of weakness, one fracture inside a marriage already burdened by fame, to unravel everything. There were no winners in their story, only survivors. Cecilia rebuilt her life piece by piece, learning to navigate a world that refused to forget her past. Nicholas reinvented himself, crafting a new identity that distanced him from the chaos that once threatened to consume him. And while their paths now lead in different directions, the shadow of what they lived through still lingers quietly behind both of them. Their saga became a mirror reflecting the darker truths of celebrity culture, that success can vanish overnight, that love can collapse under pressure no human being was meant to endure, and that the spotlight, for all its brilliance, casts the darkest shadows. As we close this chapter, one question remains: how many other stories in Asian entertainment are still hidden behind closed doors, waiting for the moment the world finally sees the truth?